Invincible has no shortage of villains and exciting fight scenes, from Daddy's bloody mustache to the very sad fistfight with Jesse Pinkman. Each fight brings its own unique set of challenges, not just for Mark, but for the writers as well. That's why today we're going to take a closer look at Invincible's most challenging fight yet, Conquest, aka Jacked Captain Crunch. We'll explore how to properly set up a fight, keep the action engaging, and dive into the finer elements of description, visuals, and dialogue that make the action hit harder. So, strap on your hero goggles and get ready to be impaled with knowledge, because here we go. Like the fights you had back in high school, a proper setup is essential so that everyone has time to take their bets and prep their camera phones to record you getting your butt kicked. Alluding to an upcoming fight builds tension in the same way a ticking time bomb or a burning candle does. If the audience knows a confrontation is coming, anticipation ramps up, and they make a deeper investment in your characters. Invincible accomplishes this at the end of Season 2, when Anissa warns that Conquest will soon show up to gut Mark and rip Oliver in half like a straw wrapper. This sets the stage for an epic showdown, but we're left in suspense, not knowing exactly when the fight will occur. Why this is excellent storytelling and why you should want to implement a similar tactic into your story is that it gets the audience invested in future events. It's a threat to Mark as much as it is a promise to us as viewers that says, keep watching the show, and in some undisclosed amount of time, you'll get to watch a Super Saiyan match with more blood, less talking, and a disappointing amount of glowing hair. Sold. Sign me up. That sounds awesome. But it's not enough to have the promise of action looming on the horizon. Something needs to be placed at risk to really give a fight its teeth.
But Andrews, doesn't staying alive constitute as something at risk?
Oh, it does. But we're overachievers here on this channel, and also, a strange writing tip that the OG 2001 Spider-Man got right is that it's not enough to fight a superhero in a battle of life or death.
The heart, Osborn. First, we attack his heart.
A fight setup has just as much to do with who the two characters fighting are as it does with what they stand to lose in this fight and what might be gained if they win. So if we skip ahead to the end of Season 3, we know that we have Mark versus Conquest. The stakes are life or death, plus the fate of Earth, plus whether or not Invincible gets renewed for Season 4. It sounds like there's a lot already riding on this fight, and we should be set for a dramatic 30-minute showdown. But we're not. This is going to sound weird, but we actually need to put more emotional seasoning on this Pound Town Supreme once the fight gets started. That's where Oliver and Eve fly onto the scene. For you, me, and every other member of the audience, Earth being at risk doesn't evoke the same emotional response as one of the characters we know considerably well, even though that character lives on Earth, being put at risk. It sounds stupid, I know, but this is how the mind works. It's not enough that hundreds of nameless people get sonic boomed in half on a beach. We need characters with emotional weight to enter the fray and risk their lives alongside Mark in order to get the most emotional juice out of this superpower smackdown. The trick for you as the writer, then, becomes to determine where these other characters fit into the fight to enhance the pacing and allow the episode and audience to breathe. This is probably what most of you came here for. How do you structure the action of a fight scene? The short answer is, like every other scene. The long answer is, you need a clear goal, an obstacle that threatens that goal, and an up and down struggle between the hero and that obstacle. In the fight between Conquest and Invincible, Mark's goal is to save the Earth and stay alive for Eve. Conquest's goal is to destroy Mark and everything he stands for. From there, the action follows. Writing a fight scene, at the basic level, comes down to following a story structure. There are highs and lows, false victories, rock bottoms, climaxes, and resolutions. So, let's see how this plays out in the fight between Conquest and Invincible.
Okay, that's a start.
Mark starts the fight with an apparent upper hand until he and Conquest get into space, at which point Conquest blows him a blood heart. The progress we thought Mark was making was just a mini false victory. Now things start going downhill for Mark. getting his butt snapped in half while Cecil reads Conquest power levels, and Debbie wins the Mother of the Year award by allowing Oliver to unpeople an old man. This signifies Mark's first big failure in the fight, as he's clearly outmatched, but then Oliver swoops in to help, raising the stakes. Mark now has to protect his brother while trying to defeat Conquest. This is when the tension heightens, and the fight feels even more desperate. Oliver's arrival adds tension to the fight because now Mark has to roundhouse kick an old man while also keeping his brother alive, which, if you've ever had to defend a fallen friend in a video game, is literally a worse experience than drinking glass mixed with cat pee. Now, we repeat the initial cycle. Mark and Oliver together seem to have an advantage over the old man until Conquest gives Oliver an anatomy lesson I won't soon forget. At this point, we're at another low. Mark is alone again. Oliver is several inches taller, and Conquest is so excited that he doesn't need his Viagra. In flies Eve, and she seems to be doing a solid job at saving Mark's butt until Conquest makes her a shish kebab, which is Mark's rock bottom moment. Like I said, the highs and lows are identical structuring to a normal story's architecture. We just apply it to a fight scene. Anyway, at rock bottom, Mark finally decides to grow a pair, use his teeth, fight angry, and still lose, getting subjected to the worst physical torture imaginable by needing to listen to a grown man's sob story. At this point, Mark is already dead inside after listening to Conquest complain, but he's also about to suffocate before Eve becomes Atomic Jesus and turns the tides a final time, so that Mark can become a woodpecker and win the battle. That's approximately exactly how the fight happened in terms of structure. This is roughly what you want in any important fight scene. Winning, losing, repeat, with each cycle of the fight amplifying the emotional stakes. In this fight, we see this cycle where at first, Mark is in danger, then Oliver, then Eve, and it's only when most of the people Mark immediately cares about are on the brink of becoming super fertilizer that Mark finally pulls through and overcomes his main obstacle. Fighting without limbs. Conquest. Notice how Oliver and Eve's appearances serve the double function of giving Mark a second opportunity at victory while also making it scarier if he loses. They function as bookends to each cycle. Your fight scenes might not have this many moving parts. If you only have 2 characters in a desert and need to fill 20 hours of runtime, then you can't break up the highs and lows with the introduction of a new character. In that case, the breaks will need to come from the scariest thing in writing, which is...
I am so lonely. All the other Viltrumites are scared of me.
If you've ever been in a real fight, you know it's usually a messy, exhausting experience. You're too angry to talk, and any words you do say just get you shoved deeper into the couch by your big sister for eating the last Pop-Tart. But in stories, fights aren't like real life. Dialogue during a fight scene isn't about small talk, it's about increasing tension and giving insight into the characters. In the Conquest vs. Invincible fight, notice how nothing particularly important is said. Conquest makes threats, Mark responds with defiance, and then things get physical again. But here's the key. That's totally fine. Dialogue in a fight doesn't have to move the plot forward. In fact, sometimes it shouldn't. Instead, it's about cranking up the tension and making the characters feel more real. For example, when Conquest says,
See, to me, there is no greater pleasure than feeling the warmth of my fists drenched in blood.
It does more than make us go, ugh. It shows us how much he enjoys violence and makes him come across as a truer monster, barely human at all. Now, while this kind of dialogue is fun, it doesn't give us a deeper, empathetic view of Conquest. So, let's dive into his monologue about being lonely at the end of the fight.
I am a victim of my own success. Conquest. I don't even get a real name, only a purpose.
It feels unnatural and clunky, out of character for what we know about Conquest. And while I don't hate it, I think it takes away from the mystery of who the character is. Here's why. I don't know why Conquest is the second scariest Viltrumite, and frankly, I never assumed that he's any different than any of the other Viltrumites we've seen up to this point in the show. But he tells us that he's an outcast in this monologue. Somehow, he is different than Lucan, Vidor, and Thula, who also tried to unpeople Mark. Somehow, he is different than Craig, who also found enjoyment in Nolan's death. Somehow, he doesn't understand why Mark defends Oliver and Eve. But then he cries about being lonely? You can see the cognitive dissonance between the fight dialogue and the final monologue, right? Cool. Then how do we go about fixing this? Happy you asked, fight scene dialogue enthusiast. It's actually pretty simple. All we would do is take the gist of Conquest monologue and blend it into the fight scene breaks. Rather than calling Mark weak, Conquest could ask how Mark defeated Thula and Vidor, further commenting that these Viltrumites never talked to him out of fear. Conquest could wonder what Anissa saw in Mark and why she didn't splatter him like a bug, subtly stating envy that Anissa likes Mark, but not him. Finally, when Mark defends Eve and Oliver during the fight, Conquest could pause to watch it, intrigued by the compassion. Now yes, admittedly, he does make a note of this compassion being a weakness, but an extra sentence could state that Conquest has never given nor received anything like this compassion. The same message is delivered, but in a subtle manner where the audience thinks, maybe Conquest sucks, but he has a reason to suck. I would like to know more. Hence giving Amazon another reason to rush produce Season 4. And since I know several of you are probably ready to throat punch me right now, I want to play devil's advocate and point out the pros of Conquest's monologue. This little one-on-one conversation has insanely well thought out serial killer vibes. I don't think I needed convinced that Conquest was wildly unstable, but this nugget of dialogue is intense, showing us the Viltrumite's duality between his colossal and violent exterior with his soft, creamy filling, before Mark shows us Conquest's other creamy filling. I'm talking about his brain, you sickos. The dialogue isn't wasted. It's not a hollow monologue where he talks about destroying Earth and how much fun he's had people popping Mark and the woman he loves. It's a catharsis for Conquest, something serving a practical purpose in the story, while also serving the dual purpose of making his character a bit more scary with the crazy vibes, and more empathetic with feelings of loneliness to the audience. The main takeaway for you aspiring writers is that there are pros and cons with everything. Yes, you can sneak the same points of a monologue into a regular conversation, but it might not be... well, scratch that. It won't be as dramatic as a monologue. Conversely, you can write a monologue into a fight scene, but it might come across as out of place. Do what you feel is best for your specific fight and the character personalities involved.
He's in a 400-ton block of tungsten steel alloy 6 miles underground. If he so much as twitches, this whole place explodes.
Writing an engaging fight scene goes beyond just action and choreography. It's about structuring the scene like a story, with emotional highs and lows that mirror the stakes of the conflict. By raising those stakes, like putting characters we care about in immediate danger, you create a sense of urgency and investment. And while dialogue might not always drive the plot forward, it can deepen the tension, offering insight into a character's motivations and making the stakes feel even more personal. Just like in the battle between Conquest and Invincible, the best fight scenes are ones that not only showcase physical conflict, but also tell a compelling emotional story that resonates with the audience. So, next time you write a fight scene, remember, it's not just about punches thrown, but about how you can elevate the emotional impact of the moment for your readers or viewers. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you think down in the comments section, and until next time, go write the best fight scenes possible. The end.